Welcome back to the API Hacking for Beginners series. In today's video, we're going to learn how to exploit an SQL injection vulnerability in the VVMA project. This is the fourth video in the series. So far, we've covered how to analyze API endpoints in VVMA, broken objects property level authorization flaws, exploiting JWT vulnerabilities, right? And today we are diving into SQL injection, right? This is a short and practical video. First, I'll give a quick explanation of what SQL injection is. Then we'll move into VVMA project, right, to see the vulnerability in action. After that, we are going to manually exploit the vulnerability before using SQLMap to automate the process, and that's going to be the end of the video, right? Yes, so what is SQL injection? SQL injection is like a vulnerability that allows an attacker to inject malicious SQL code into an application, usually through the input field. Yeah. So the goal, right? The goal is to access and manipulate database in unauthorized ways. Attackers can use SQL injection to retrieve sensitive data like usernames, passwords, credit card info, and more. Basically, anything that is stored in the database. Even though SQL injection is no longer in the OWASP top 10 API security risks as of 2023, that doesn't mean that it's no longer a threat. Many APIs are still vulnerable to injection flaws, and it's important to know how to spot and exploit them for security testing purposes, right? So that's it for SQL injection explanation. Like I said, I won't go into much details of what the vulnerability is, since we might be familiar with it or we've heard about it. If you want to read more about SQL injection, you can just do a research on it. So we are going to test for SQL injection now in VVMA. Before that, let us check the box that we've completed the explanation of SQL injection, and I hope you understood the explanation. Yes, so now I'm going to navigate to the browser, right, and then the login endpoint of the API. So I'm just going to try out the login endpoint, right? Just anything, just to make sure that Bob Suits right has captured the request. And I'm going to click the execute button. Come to Bob Suits right. Send this to repeater. Yes, so to test for SQL injection, to test if the endpoint is vulnerable, we have to use a single quote in the email field, right? So in the email field, we enter a single quote and send the request. We see that the response that is returned is a 500 internal server error, right? With a message saying you have an error in your SQL syntax, blah blah blah. This kind of response is a classic indicator that the application might be vulnerable to SQL injection. Here's why. So the single quote is used in SQL injection to define a string. So if the application takes the user input and puts it directly into a SQL query, right, without properly escaping or sanitizing it, then the single quote can break the syntax of the query. So instead of treating it as part of the input, right, the database tries to interpret it as part of the SQL code itself, causing a syntax error. So that's why we use a single quote during manual testing to see if it triggers a SQL error, and this hints at poor input validation. So yeah, let's take a look at the actual login code for VVMA, right? This is what the query, right, looks like in the back end. Yeah, so when a normal user logs in, right, it becomes this. This is what the query looks like. But when an attacker, right, enters the single quote, right, as the email, this is what the query looks like. Like I explained, the query becomes broken and the extra quote is the string and causes a syntax error. So yeah, let's look at a classic SQL injection payload, which is commonly used to bypass the login rights, which is commonly used to bypass login. So it's a single quote followed by the or operator and then 1 equals 1, which is then followed by two dashes. So the two dashes are for commenting the rest of the query, and the rest of the query here is the password. So we are commenting out the password, right? So since 1 is always equals to 1, it's going to see this as a valid match, right? And then we'll be able to bypass the login. So let me send this. We are able to bypass the login and then we are signed in as the first user in the database, right? As a first user in the database. You can even just to verify this, right, come to the copy the token, right, and come to the JWT security checker tool, paste the token, and then it decodes it. We see that the user ID is 1 and the user email, right, is unattached. So we bypass the login and we get automatically logged in as the first user in the database. For most cases, right, the first user is always the admin. So next up, we are going to automate the exploitation, right? So, and we will be using SQLMap. Before then, let's before then, let us check the box. We are done with the manual exploitation of SQL injection. This is like one of the easiest representation of SQL injection vulnerabilities. They are more advanced, right? SQL injection flaws that you have to like know how to exploit. But for VVMA, this is what is presenting in the API. So we're going to like automate the process, right? Before that, we have to save this request to a file, right? So copy to file, just give it a name. We're going to run SQLMap, right? Using option R followed by the file name, right? We are going to have to use another option, which is ignore code. Run the command. So the attack is done, right? The attack is completed. At the end, it says the web application technology, right? The backend that is used is Express. It says the backend database, right, is MySQL, right? So it says that the JSON email parameter, right, might be injectable. We're just going to go ahead, right, to enumerate for databases, right, to see what database, right, exists. So I'm just going to rerun the command, right. Just go with default. It's retrieved three databases, right. Information schema, which is the default. It has retrieved performance schema, which is default, and then the user management, which is the the actual database. So SQL has successfully retrieved the database that is used by VVMA. The next thing we want to do is to list the tables, right, that are in this database. So just run back the command and then we're going to specify the database, right, we want to fetch the tables from, and then using the tables option. So it's retrieving the tables for the user management database, and it says that it has retrieved three tables, right, which is group members, groups, and then the users. So we can then go on to list the columns that are in any of these tables. So I'm going to start with the group columns, right? So right, it has successfully like listed the 7 columns, which is the role, the bio, the created at, email, ID, password, and user name. So we can even go further, right, to list the usernames, right? We want to like the data, right, that is in the username data. So this is it, right? The usernames, right, that are in the database. So right, we can decide to go even further, like to dump other things, right? You can even use the dump all option. So, but I'm just going to end this here. So we've seen how we are able to manually bypass authorize bypass authentication. I mean with the classic SQL injection payload, and then we've seen how we are able to automate the exploitation of SQL injection using the SQLMap. We were able to not only check if the application was vulnerable using the tool, but we used it to enumerate the for database rights that exist. We use it to list the tables, the columns in tables, and even dump data, right? That's it, right? For the exploitation, it's up to you to even like try further what you can even achieve with the tool and yeah with VVMA project. I'm just going to tick the box, right? The we are done with automating the process, right? So that's it. I hope you've learned something, right? Yeah, so thank you for watching. If you enjoy the video and you want to see more from me, do not forget to hit the like button, the subscribe button, right, and turn on your notification for more.